What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another Oscars video. Today we're ranking all 8 of the Best Picture nominated films from worst to best. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on these films were, as well as your lists. As a reminder, this is just my personal list and not a definitive ranking. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these videos, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it and let's get into the list. In last place is The Trial of the Chicago 7. And I want to be clear, I don't dislike this movie. I know a lot of people really loved it, and if you did, that's great. I'm not here to crap on anyone's opinions. I get why it's so beloved. It does have this very crowd-pleasing element to it, but I found that to be both a good thing and a bad thing. I liked how it tried to be very inspirational, and I think the entire cast gives it their all here, with just about all the performances being noteworthy in their own right, though I found Sacha Baron Cohen and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II to be the two standouts. I just thought that the film at times tried way too hard to be showy and theatrical. I said this in my original review, but I felt like with every line of dialogue, Aaron Sorkin was really trying hard to have that you can't handle the truth moment from A Few Good Men. Like in each scene's attempt at heightening what came before it, it felt like it was trying really hard to force having that one show-stopping moment that would really stick with everyone. And sometimes I felt that with such a focus on that particular aspect, it lost sight a bit at who these 7 figures really were, the ramifications this case had on the world, especially with some of its parallels to current events. It just felt a bit too romanticized for me. And I get the actual court case was a bit of a circus, but this still felt like a bit much. It's still not a bad movie though, don't get me wrong, I just didn't love it. At number 7 is Mank, another film that I don't really dislike, but I'd say if anything, I respect it more than I actually like it. It's the sort of film you'd watch if you were looking to study technique and aesthetic rather than to just watch an entertaining movie. But I really gotta hand it to David Fincher here for all the attention to detail he put into recreating the look and feel of actual films from the 1930s and 40s. The thing is, that's about the most compelling thing this has going for it. While the making of Citizen Kane, regarded as the greatest movie of all time, seems like it would be really intriguing, honestly, the story wasn't anything I found myself able to connect with. A lot of the screenplay relies on your knowledge of not just the film industry at that time, but also events in general of that time period. And if you don't know anything about this era, you might be lost. But honestly, even if you do get it, like I did, that doesn't mean you'll suddenly have this deep emotional connection to the material or anything. You'll just know what's going on, and that's not enough for a super compelling story. I really respect the craft, I respect the attention to detail, I thought all the performances were good, the little Easter eggs and references to events at that time were nice, it makes for a nice conveying of information, and I know this was a huge passion project for Fincher, since his late father wrote the script years ago, so I'm glad he got to see it through. That doesn't mean it's a film I'd go out of my way to revisit anytime soon, besides just to study it. At number 6 is Nomadland, and from here on out, I thought everything on here was great. Going into this, I actually thought I'd wind up placing this even lower on the list, but what makes this ultimately connect so well for me is its somewhat unintentional parallels to current events with the pandemic. This actually took place in the wake of another economic crisis, that being the Great Recession, and it takes a look at those who did manage to make something of the situation, but still felt left behind in the economic recovery. And more than likely, if you found yourself even in a slightly similar situation as the characters here, maybe not necessarily living life as a nomad, this will definitely connect with you on a deeper level. And even if you haven't been in this situation, I still think you'll enjoy it to some degree. It doesn't exactly have a concrete narrative with one specific obstacle that our main character has to overcome. Instead, it takes more of this day-in-the-life approach to how the nomads operate. But between Chloe Zhao's direction and the performances, in particular Frances McDormand's, it still makes for a compelling experience. At number 5 is Minari, another film that takes more of this day-in-the-life approach rather than being about one particular event or set of events. But of all the films on this list, it's the one I'd easily describe as the most delightful, giving us a nice look into the lives of this family just trying to make something they can call their own. And while the storyline involving Stephen Yeun as the family patriarch is great, it's the subplot with his son and his mother-in-law that absolutely steal the show. These two are incredibly sweet together and would be so full of warmth that it's hard not to smile whenever we cut to them. The film's filled with a lot of emotional ups and downs for our main characters, but because of how strong the performances are, when things go down, it's absolutely heartbreaking. Though when they get a win, you'll find yourself so happy for them. And it's really a testament of just how great the filmmaking is when it lets the story take something of a backseat and just rely on characters being in the moment, and it still hits you incredibly hard. At number 4 is Judas and the Black Messiah, the first major film to do any sort of deep dive into the life of Fred Hampton, though told through the point of view of the man who betrayed him. And while I admit I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of this choice for point of view, I still thought it was a very well crafted biographical drama that works more than your standard biopic, mainly for how it was done in the style of an unnerving high stakes thriller, though it does so while still honoring Fred Hampton's life, even if it only looks at one very small part of it. Shaka King's direction is excellent, and this makes for a fantastic debut, but where this film ultimately shines are the performances. Lakeith Stanfield does a great job as the informant William O'Neill, though it's Daniel Kaluuya who absolutely crushes it as Hampton himself. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself. I mean, I watched interviews with the actual Hampton afterwards, and it's amazing just how spot on he was. And he was absolutely powerful here. His performance alone makes this worth checking out. At number 3 is Promising Young Woman, which was honestly the most pleasant surprise to see on this list. Obviously, I loved the movie and I included it in my best movies of 2020 list. It's just, considering the film's a stylish, dark comedy revenge thriller, it's rare that the Academy includes either genre-heavy films or anything even remotely comedic in nature in its Best Picture nominees. But I'm here for it. While the film is a brilliantly executed thriller, it also does deal with some pretty heavy topics such as trauma and its ramifications, as it goes much deeper into Carey Mulligan's history and psyche. And speaking of her, while this film has an excellent all-star cast full of familiar faces popping up in nearly every scene, these are mostly just cameos, and it's ultimately Mulligan's show. This is honestly her best performance in years, if not of all time, being unlike anything we've ever seen from her. Like a few other films on this list, this also marks the feature debut for its director, in this case Emerald Fennell, but if this is any indication of what her future films will look like, I think we'll be in for a real treat. So, for my top 2, it comes down to Sound of Metal and The Father, and this was actually tough. I gave both movies the same score. I absolutely loved both of them. Any issues I had with them boil down to little nitpicks at best. And even though I have to put one over the other, honestly, it comes down to like a fraction of a difference for me. Ask me on a different day, I may say something different. But my number 2 is The Father. This movie almost broke me, as it's just incredibly heartbreaking to watch. And the main reason for that is Anthony Hopkins, who, as I've said in my other videos covering this movie, gives what is quite possibly his best performance since Silence of the Lambs. I was floored by just how good he was, and what helped too was Florian Zeller's stylistic choices of presenting this movie through his point of view. Usually with these films that centralize an illness or a disease, it's presented from the viewpoint of whoever's caring for that person. But here, we're experiencing events as Hopkins' character would, and it makes the film not only that much more emotional as we watch him struggle to have some sort of control over his mind, but it also acts as something of a mystery film as we try piecing together what's true and what isn't. Which, admittedly, I'm not always a fan of that trope in more genre-heavy films, but here, it's handled very tastefully, and it actually makes the story much more impactful in my view. And I also don't want to forget Olivia Colman, who also gives a top-notch performance here, as we still do see how the struggle of taking care of her father takes its toll on her. I know it's been said countless times already, myself included, but if you've especially had a family member go through a horrible disease like dementia, this will hit you even harder. But my number 1 is Sound of Metal, and again, ask me on a different day, maybe I'll give you a different answer, as it was really close, but I'm going with this. This actually takes a similar approach that The Father takes, as we experience most of the events just as the way our main character experiences them. Though this time, instead of someone experiencing dementia, it's someone losing their hearing and trying to adjust to life unable to hear anything. This had easily the best sound mixing from last year, with the way the film recreates how our lead character now experienced the world, with things such as vibrations amplified as a result of his hearing loss. And it was done so well. On top of that, as with these other films, there is a standout lead performance, in this case being Riz Ahmed, who I'm glad finally got another chance to be in the lead, as nearly all of his performances this past decade have been nothing but supporting or antagonistic roles. But he really can carry his own here, and I'm glad this showed us how much of a powerhouse of a performer he is. Though, unlike a few other films on this list, it's not just his performance that carries this, as it does have a solid supporting cast who do play fully fleshed out characters themselves. In particular, Paul Raci as the head of the deaf community where Ahmed stays. I also think with this film, it's not just a character study, but there's even more meaning behind it, as the film takes a look at how you can still find meaning in your life and still find your place in the world, even when you have the one thing you love the most taken away from you. Considering Ahmed's character's whole life was his music and he based everything around it, we see as he still finds a way to channel his experiences into something positive for others now that that's gone, as he begins to make an impact on the lives of those in his community. And I thought that was just wonderful in the way it was executed. An emotional ride from start to finish. This is an excellent film that isn't just my number one choice on this list, but one of my favorite movies of 2020. And that's my ranking of the Best Picture nominees. We have some really good choices in there this year. As usual, a couple of movies that I wasn't crazy about, but the top 3 on this list were movies I absolutely loved, so I was happy to see them all get nominated. As for doing other videos on the Oscars, it is starting to get close. I'm going to see if I can get at least one more of these in before the actual awards, but we'll see. Let me know though, what's your ranking of the Best Picture nominees? Did you agree with this list at all? Did you disagree with it? Did you even get to see all 8 movies? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.